because there are some benefits to the cannabis, but if it's being highly processed, if it's being, intertwined with these chemicals, your whole life is just grinding and working. So I didn't feel like I could live in the city and take any time to myself.
Everything gets boring and repetitive. So the cannabis allowed him in mind, body, and spirit and munchies to keep everything going.
And I've actually done 10-day silent meditations, and I've felt in my body the difference of, my thoughts and how that interacts with my body and certain aches, pains.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they are wired the way they are, so that we, all former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
Hi there, this is Sifu Slim, and I am really excited today, and I'm feeling great. I just got out of the ocean, which is what this giant jacket is. It's one of the long ones that water polo players wear and the swimmers wear, divers wear it. You put it on after you get out of the water, keep warm and dry off. And I just did that in the Pacific Ocean, where the temperature right now is about 64 degrees. And what I discovered back in May, with a very dear friend of mine, is that when you go in there and you spend a certain amount of time in there, your biochemistry changes. It's good for your entire system, your muscles, bones, everything likes that cold water, and then the difference in the expansion and the contraction of the body. But we got a dopamine rush, and we're giggly, happy, and lovey-dovey for the next 3 years. I mean, how can you beat that? Called the natural high, and it's given to you by our ocean, in this case, the Pacific Ocean. So I'm going to bring in Andy LeSavage and ask him if he's ever had that, and ask him when that was and what he thought about that whole dopamine dump.
Hi, Sifu. Good to see you. Thanks for having me. I'm in Santa Barbara myself, and I moved here because I could jump in the ocean every day and actually get that great rush and body high and mental clarity from that cold water. So I know that feeling well.
So you've had that in any time in the last month that you can recall?
Oh yeah, I actually go to a gym here where I can do a cold plunge and immerse myself in, I think it's about 43-degree water. And so I'll go in there for a couple minutes. And that's been something I'm actually kind of addicted to now, is just going in and doing the deep breathing in the cold water.
That's really good to hear. And I think, Andy, that when I first heard about that cold plunge, I was in college, and the training centers where we used to go, things like used to be called 24-Hour Nautilus, and these other really large gyms that were forming at the time, back in the early 80s, they started putting in not just the jacuzzis and the saunas, but these cold baths. And bodybuilders at the time were swearing by it. And I'm sure the other sports therapists and sports trainers were using that also therapeutically, and all kinds of other reasons. It's got so many properties. And then you read about today, the big traction that Wim Hof has, W-I-M, Hof, I believe he's from Holland, and how he's saved his own life and was able to continue on after the death of his wife, and then passing on how he's changed his lifestyle and his stress level because of that, becoming the Iceman and going into cold, and then having people across the globe get on his program. Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, other people with sports things, with stress things, with busyness, whatever. Have you done anything or studied at all, Andy, Wim Hof?
I'm glad you mentioned him. He's like a figurehead to me because I actually grew up in Boulder, Colorado. My dad was an Ironman triathlete, crazy marathon runner back before it was cool, and he always told me to jump in the ocean. I lived in San Francisco, and he said, you should be jumping in the bay, you should join the dolphin club, and swim out to Alcatraz. I thought he was crazy, right? Water was cold, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But now, mostly because of Wim Hof, it's become such a normalized thing to do, and it's just taking off because there's so many health benefits to it. And I've actually talked to Wim Hof's family because I reached out to him, and I had this idea to create a cold plunge tub because I saw this trend that's now just taking off, and now everyone's into the cold plunge. And so it's actually wild to see the demand at the club that I go to for this cold plunge. It's like there's always a couple people waiting to get in there, whereas maybe 5 years ago, before the Wim Hof thing, people just thought you were crazy and no one wanted to interact with the cold water. And have you done any of his breathing exercises?
I have done the breathing exercises, and it's something else I want to have a conversation with, is somebody who's an expert on that, and then an expert on meditation, because I've got thoughts on both of those things biochemically, and then I study the hunter-gatherers a lot, and so I want to bring everything back to ancient traditions from hunter-gatherers, things that they used that made them function at a high level and thrive when they could. And I want to bring in some more people who are specialists in those fields, Andy, and ask them their opinions. So if anyone out there knows people who are experts on meditation and yoga and know some of the biochemistry involved and some of the ice plunge and that biochemistry, love to get the science and your feedback on some of these subjects. And if Andy, if you know anyone, definitely connect me through my website, which is theagingathlete.com.
I love it. Yeah, I would be happy to connect you with some great people. I've been influenced by some good friends, family members, and just living the healthiest life possible. And it's about, balance between body and mind. And I've actually done 10-day silent meditations, and I've felt in my body the difference of, my thoughts and how that interacts with my body and certain aches, pains, and how important it is to clear that out. And doing practices like Wim Hof and doing the breathing, it's just so important for every single person, whether you're an athlete or not. And so I love this stuff. I'm actually taking a Wim Hof fundamentals course too, so I can learn more about the background and the psychology to what he's built with his app, and the deep breathing, the cold plunging, and these different tools. And I think also community is very important. So I'm glad we're talking, because I'm sure you have amazing insights I'd love to hear more about, and kind of what your practices are on a daily basis. And
yeah, you have a podcast, and let's direct people to your website where there's lots of information about consulting, marketing, brand strategy, your podcasts, and the list goes on from there. And I really like the way you've done your website. It's simple, artistic, and it doesn't have all of these wild colors all over the place. It's very pleasing and restful to the eye. You can find what you want to find. And that is, I like to capitalize your L-E, and then capitalize your S. I hope you're okay with my capitalization. That's how I wrote it
that's
down.
perfect. That's perfect, Sifu.
LeSavage.com. So tell us about who you are and some of your growing up experiences and what your mission is. That's a lot of stuff, but let's start diving into some of that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I have been really waiting for a platform because I've got some crazy stories, and growing up as a savage running around the mountains of Boulder, Colorado. I was lucky enough to have my family move from Ohio, where I was born when I was 3, went to Boulder, Colorado, because my dad knew how important it was to live a healthy lifestyle. And so he was a runner and wanted to raise his family where he could have good, healthy drinking water and clean air. And so grew up running trails and was on the first lacrosse team to come through Boulder, and got to go to Colorado State and play lacrosse there. Graduated with a degree in political science. And so again, a lot of everything I've been doing is around holistic health and, working on my body and my mind and making sure that those are in collaboration all the time. And so I worked in the mountains. I was a ski bum for a couple of years, and then realized that was not going to be healthy for me long term to be, stuck in the mountain town where I was having to, find new ways to work and stay healthy, and just wanted more. And so I moved to San Francisco about a decade ago at this point, and I've been out in California ever since. And so I moved to Santa Barbara because the lifestyle is similar to Boulder, and all I want to do at the end of the day is bike and run and eat good food and be around like-minded people. So I've worked in a number of different industries, and all of it's been building up to be able to build companies, help entrepreneurs, and help people live healthier, stronger lives. And so, I can go in depth and talk a lot about my different jobs I've had, but during the pandemic, I started a fitness company called profitstrength.com. And so I started that with $500 and shipped adjustable dumbbells out of my buddy's garage. And I was able to send over 10,000 pounds of weight across North America. And so that was really rewarding for me to help people.
So, share your website again on that one.
That one's Profit. So it's PROFIT strength.com. So profitstrength.com. And that's really my passion. And, that helped me survive and helped me move to Santa Barbara. And, at the end of the day, I didn't want to work in software and startups without being able to get behind the message. And so as long as I can help people, with their strength and mindset, then I'm going to be happy.
Wonderful. So we met at a wellness seminar that was product oriented and research oriented by a mutual contact of ours, longtime friend and my jiu-jitsu partner, Steve Abbey. And he's been doing deep dives on health and wellness for 35 years. And there are videos where Steve and I are talking about a variety of health subjects on my YouTube channels. So just look up Sifu Slim and Steve Abbey, Abbey, and tell me how you got connected to Steve and what you thought of his product.
Yeah, that was a great event that just kind of came about on a whim, thanks to my friend Leanne, who's a great PR woman here. And she does the PR for Autumn Brands. So that's a cannabis company that I'm the marketing director for, and really great family run cannabis farm. And it's all about sustainability. They used to grow flowers and just got into cannabis. And so I'm taking my entrepreneurial skill and know how to build a brand and website and market for them. So it feels really good. And so I got connected to them, and she invited me to the event. And I tried the SOS nutrition packet yesterday in my smoothie. It was really good. So yeah, we got to meet, and I'm always trying to learn more about nutrition and find new elements to integrate into my diet. And I've got crazy smoothie regimen myself, and getting into some supplements for profit strength. So I'm constantly looking to see what new element I can add to my diet and my health. And so, raw honey and cacao, and that's another reason I'm in Santa Barbara, is because I feel like everyone that you run into is kind of aware of what's happening on the latest trends, and has some insights into what might be able to be helpful for you.
Thanks for sharing that, Andy. The cannabis farm is located in Carpinteria.
Yes.
And are they doing greenhouse growing?
Yes.
Is it highly electric wattage and voltage using because of air conditioning, those types of things, or how have they set it up, if you happen to know?
It's an amazing operation. So there's something about the Dutch and farming that I need to learn more about, because it's like a lineage that goes on, and they just know how to harvest and connect with the land on another level. And so there's a lot of Dutch folks in Carpinteria, and so this family, they started with the flowers, cut flowers like you would buy in a grocery store or for your wife, girlfriend, and then they got into cannabis. And so it's actually the same process as a regular plant, only it's cannabis plant. So they use cacao or cocoa as the soil. So each little plant has its cocoa, and it's in a little pot, and then all the water is full circle sustainable. So we actually pump all the water back through the system, so we don't have to use a lot of the water. It's certainly intensive as far as utilities go, though, as far as water and lighting, but as far as the greenhouse and the operation, it's about as efficient as it can get. And so we use all sustainable practices. We don't spray any pesticides on the cannabis at all, so that's very important. And then where we are located, it gets that natural light, so there's actually not a whole lot of artificial anything. There's some fans, and there's minimal lighting here and there, but there's not the big UV lights or anything like that at all. So it's very natural.
So before we started, there were two things that came up. You asked me about my name, Sifu Slim. My real name is Henry Kreuter, and I went with Sifu Slim back in 2008 when I started this initiative, because I wanted to have something that was a little bit playful. I've been doing martial arts a long time. Fitness is my main sport, but I do lots of other sports connected to team sports, individual sports. The list is very long. But fitness is my mainstay. I would call myself a Jack LaLanne devotee. And it's been really helpful, because when you're a thin person with a small frame, as I am, and I wanted to play sports, wrestling, football, kill the guy with the ball was really popular when I was an 8 to 15-year-old. I mean, we were just doing that all the time. The fitness was what allowed me to at least not get hurt, not dominate the bigger, stronger linebacker built kids. But that fitness was a mainstay, and I just kept on it, and I do not miss. That's kind of my thing, and almost like my daily mantra is to move your body, and I'll do that usually every bathroom break. There'll be some stretches or some movement, and then one big one in the morning, and then maybe a tennis game or a little bit of a run, and then a stretch before I go to sleep at night, just a light 3 to 5 minute stretch. So that's been like a mainstream. So Sifu is the father, teacher, master in martial arts, or sensei in the Japanese arts, Shifu in Mandarin, Sifu in Cantonese. And I thought it was a nice playful way to say, hey, I've been working on mind, body, and spirit and self mastery all these years, and I'm still a skinny guy, still a the Gilligan Michael Jackson build, even though I always wanted to kind of build up to a linebacker and put on that extra 30, 40 pounds, never able to do it. And right now I'm really happy that I'm 179, which is high for me. And it's maybe because of age. I'm about to turn 60. I do not know. I'm very happy right now. It could be because of that. and who the heck knows, but I'm happy at
Well,
178, 179.
you look great. You look like you're in great shape. And so, you're doing something right. That's for sure. How did you get into jujitsu? I'm very interested in that. And,
Yeah.
I've had it on my checklist to go to a couple different places, but I just have not got into that quite yet.
Well, in my unconscious mind, I think I have a vein of philosophy that is a saver and a financially frugal person.
Me
I
too.
do
Me too.
I do like to save money. I do not mind spending, on a golf, occasional really nice golf course, or the chiropractor or what have you. But I would like to have more money coming in than going out. So I've been wired for that. And in the back of my head, I always knew that skiing and golf, those are two of my most expensive and my favorite sports. They can break the bank if you really get
Yeah.
into either of those. I know somebody back in the late 80s in Cape Cod in one summer, that was in the late 80s when golf was a lot cheaper. He told me that he spent, and this was August, but between June and August, end of August, he had spent $3,500 on his golf greens fees, and that's not counting range balls. That's not counting driving to the course. And nowadays we'd be doing chiropractics to go along with our golf game. Now I would guess you take that number and you'd almost multiply it by 10, or at least half a 10, multiply it by
It's
5,
not
and that
cheap to golf.
yeah, that would be $20,000 or something at public courses to play a variety of public courses in a summer. And now there are a lot of places where carts are mandatory. It's not just that they want to make money; they also want play to speed along. So those are some of the things that prompted me when jujitsu came along, and somebody invited me into that, and I found that I had some ability into it, and I really liked it. $150 a month or $250 a month right now, whatever it costs, is so reasonable compared to $150 per day at a golf course. A nicer public course would be $150 a day, and I think Pebble Beach up in the Monterey area would probably be $500 or $600 for one
Oh
round.
yeah. Yeah. So is it a monthly membership for the jujitsu? And do you have a spot to go that you recommend for someone like myself just getting started?
Yeah, I'm going to put a plug in to all the jujitsu centers I've ever been to. I've never had a bad experience in a jujitsu gym. They're very much, it's like a brother. You go in, or so the females there are your sisters. They look out for you. You think about the owner of the gym and the coaches. If you're injured, they don't have a student anymore, and then they have a potential liability or a bad apple complaining about them. So they really want to take care of you and bring you along at the proper pace. And you might go in and sign up and go, I want to do 5 or 6 days a week. I would tell people, hey, you don't learn golf that way. You don't learn tennis
Right.
that way. Come on. Take it in stride. It's a new thing. Do 2 days a week is a good time, and continue your fitness and your stretching and your therapeutical exercises and chiropractic physical therapy, and put all in there. So that's what I would do, Andy. And here in Santa Barbara, my longtime contact and gym is Valhalla Elite Training
Okay.
Center. And I
Yeah.
have videos of Michael McDonald, the head Sifu and owner, and myself, and these cool interviews on YouTube. So check out Sifu Slim and Sifu Mike on YouTube.
Yeah, I've got a buddy that went to Valhalla, and I was looking at that as one of the options. So that's good to hear. And you addressed what I was going to ask too, is, the injury concern for me is high. That plays into the cost of things. I don't want to have to go to the hospital, and I also want to be able to maintain my health and my body. And so I think I've been a little hesitant, honestly, to go into jiu-jitsu because I don't want to be injured for running or biking. I don't want someone to crank on my knee and have that pop out. So I think, having a trusted place to go is key. And I'm glad you framed it like that. Yeah, they're not going to want you injured, right?
No,
So
no.
do they pair you up with someone that's equivalent as far as your size or strength, or how does that typically work?
Yeah, just to give you an example, when I was in Vienna last summer, which was the last time that I've done jujitsu. I'm about a year and 4 months out of it, unfortunately. No, actually, I did it all the way till Christmas. So I'm still under a year out of jujitsu. And one of the reasons that I'm out of it currently is that I don't have time to do it right. And to do it right, you got to be prepared, in my opinion, in mind, body, and spirit when you're going in. And you got to have the time to take your outfits, your gi, put them out in the sun, dry them off properly, wash them when they need to be washed, and do your stretching and do your chiropractics. You got to do it all right, or in my opinion, it won't be a good experience. So right now I'm doing heavy duty tennis and heavy duty golf and my normal fitness. And then I'm also doing some other things. So I took a little step back from jujitsu. And if I never go back in, I'm actually, about to turn 60. I think that I owe the sport a lot of gratitude, the practice a lot
Right.
of gratitude, but I don't have to prove anything. I
Right.
lasted with 20-year-olds all the way until I was 59, and I'm still walking and I'm still sleeping and I don't have a neck that's out of whack. And I've been injured, typically 4 times per year. When I was going to jujitsu twice a week, was how many times I would get injured. None were surgery needed, but a couple were scary, but most of them were just like a bruise, a bloody nose, a sprained ankle, a twisted wrist, whatever. And that's normal. That mountain bikers, from my knowledge, and our friend Steve had an accident recently and he needed surgery on his meniscus. Mountain biking, much more dangerous a sport than my
Very
opinion
dangerous.
than jujitsu.
Very dangerous to mountain bike. I actually stick with the road bike, and I'm gonna head out on the road bike after this. But everyone asked me, being from Colorado, they're like, "Oh, are you a mountain biker?" I'm like, "No, I was on Rim Trail and Snowmass, and I had a close call. And if you go off 1 inch, you could be flying off a cliff. So that's one of those things. I stick to what I know on that front, and yeah,
Well, while we're on the subject of martial arts, and we'll talk a little bit about combat, I sent you a video about Frank Shamrock, who's about my age. I'm about to turn 60, so he's within three years or so of my age. He's an MMA legend. And now he's a guy that I would call a non-natural athlete. He didn't do other sports. I don't. He grew up in a very challenging experience in his youth. At some point in his youth, living out of like a box on the backyard or the front yard of his house. His parents couldn't deal with him anymore, and he didn't have the full normal nuclear family. He had just problems galore. But he was a nerd, and he really liked learning, but he didn't fit in well at school and in a lot of different organized activities. So just a problem youth. And he'll tell you about this on his bios on YouTube. And I'm sure he's written a book, but really interesting guy. And then he got into prison. And then along the way, when he got out of prison, where he had to fight to keep himself going, he was turned on to jujitsu and combat sports. And he got very good at it very quickly. And within 6 months, he was at a dojo in Japan. Can you imagine that? I mean, that's really some incredible gifts. So what he says, at his weight, he's not a tall guy. I think he's in the 5'9" range, maybe a little shorter. He had to keep weight on. His weight that he liked to be was in competition was the 190 to 195 weight. And when you're training all the time, he doesn't have a really large musculature naturally, like his adopted brother Ken Shamrock would have a large musculature, who could get up to 225. He had a hard time keeping weight on with all that practice and all the drilling and all the weightlifting and the running and everything. So what he found, not just pain remediation and inflammation remediation, he found that cannabis, which he did regularly, daily, multiple times per day, allowed him to get the munchies so that he could keep ingesting food, and which everything becomes boring when you're training 6 or 8 hours a day and having to sleep and get chiropractic or whatever. Everything gets boring and repetitive. So the cannabis allowed him in mind, body, and spirit and munchies to keep everything going. And so did you happen to take a look at that video? And if you would, Andy, share your thoughts on some of this.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you tied that all together. And so that is, something that I've gotten into cannabis recently because, it's something that is a holistic form of healing, and it's not just smoking to get high and tuning out the world. There's so many benefits to cannabis, and it's one of those medicines that it kind of gets a bad rap a lot of the time. But hopefully with what we're doing with Autumn Brands, just launched a podcast where Autumn Shelton's really speaking to a lot of great people about the benefits of cannabis and about how the sustainable greenhouse and grow operation is, and just the whole network of benefits that come with cannabis and the certain strains, right? There's the hybrid, there's the sativa, there's the indica, and you can use these strains to get certain benefits. So indica, you have Indicouch, would be good before you go to bed. If you're, anxious, there's different strains that all have different terpenes to them. And so the terpenes correlate basically to the same thing you'd get in wine, right? So, drink a red wine, it's earthy, you've got hints of plum. The same thing is in cannabis. And so we've got our particular strains, and each strain's got terpenes. And so if you're looking for, body high, you can smoke a certain strain that's going to allow you to get certain benefits. There's definitely some cannabis you can get, crazy, goofy, you can laugh, it's just like any medication, basically. I mean, a lot of the medication, Western medicine, it comes from the earth at one starting point, and then it just kind of gets parsed out and, specialized out. So I think it all comes back to just almost stay grounded, get back to the earth, figure out what it is that you need for your body and your mind, and try and be aware of that. And, I've got a lot of respect for the early MMA fighters. I've heard, Chuck Liddell's around Santa Barbara. I actually had a girl I dated briefly who dated Chuck Liddell, and he's one guy you don't want to cross. But yeah, I think cannabis is one of those tools that used wisely can be a really good tool for athletes. I know Floyd Landis, the ex-cyclist, he started his own company, and that was really big. I think that's in a lot of the bike shops, and the CBD and the THC together can have a lot of benefits.
I could, Andy, if you don't mind, take you through just a couple of notes I jotted down about the history of cannabis, and I'm certainly not going to do an extensive history, but just a few points, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, Sifu.
So the idea that I have with anything, because I'm, a philosopher, writer, researcher, and I spend all my time, why do people think the way they do? So there's a difference in the generations, my grandmother, my parents, etc. And, in the ancestry, even the word love was not used, in the 20th century among the families that I knew. It was not a common word to say, I love you at the end of the phone call. And then somewhere in the 90s, that became more prevalent. So, everything goes through this evolution. So one word I wanted to share was the word indoctrination. So just like with spiritual practices, and it's this way and all the other ways are no good, that type of thing. And then you guard that, once you become indoctrinated, you guard that like it's a shield you have to surround your thought process with. And then you close your mind, you close your heart, and then there you are stuck. And I think part of the history of the fear and the people criticizing cannabis comes from indoctrination. And then so that's fixed mindset, et cetera.
Right.
And then along the way, the great American propaganda movie in 1936, which was a time of great fear. There was the fear of the rising Nazi power. People had just gotten done a short under 2 decades before with World War I, and people came back maimed and sick and gassed from that or dead. They didn't come back at all, except in a bag. Now we've got this fear, and then the reefer madness comes out at the same time as the rise of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
So it's a propaganda film about drugs, and it says it's revolving around the melodramatic events that ensue when high school students are they're lured by pushers trying to push this marijuana. And so they get addicted and all kinds of problems ensue. There's crime, there's accidents, there's conspiracies, all this stuff. Even attempted rape is showed in this movie, Reefer Madness. So I'll let you jump in here, Andy, and tell me if you have any thoughts about what I shared so far, any new thoughts.
Yeah, Sifu, you bring up some great points, and I could talk for ages about propaganda, advertising. I worked at a big advertising agency in San Francisco, understand how this narrative's created and kind of resurfaced and recycled through our society and consumption and these narratives that take hold. And so I think it feels like we're coming to a renaissance, though, and a certain enlightenment, like what Wim Hof is doing. You have this guy who's a character. I think we're all characters, though. At the end of the day, we all do want to be barefoot. We want to listen to music. We want to interact with people. We want to connect with our bodies. And so I think a lot of society, and you'll hear the term matrix, right? It's not just a movie, but the matrix is this narrative that's taking individuals away from their body, away from their natural rhythms, away from what we know to be true and healthy in our bodies. And at the end of the day, I think as long as you can get as close to the earth and what's natural, you're going to be better off. And so that's where cannabis, it comes from the earth. It's hopefully going to be minimally processed, although vaping is one of those things. It's catch-22, because there are some benefits to the cannabis, but if it's being highly processed, if it's being intertwined with these chemicals to make these vaporizers, then that's getting further away from really the ideal holistic scenario of the plant medicine. So I think it's just something that I try and keep in mind is, I'll obviously have to buy products from grocery store or, interact with certain things that are going to be processed, and I'll take supplements and vitamins too. But as long as I can stay as natural as possible, then I think I'm going to be better off. And I think that hopefully goes for a lot of people too.
Have you, Andy, ever had a time where, because of your training, busyness, stress, travel, commutes, these types of things, where you didn't have both easy access to sitting down and having a nice quiet meal, or weren't even hungry enough at times to take that calorie count in?
Oh yeah, good question. I was so stressed living in San Francisco because I was just a free spirit from Boulder, Colorado, and I ended up jumping into the city. I never thought I would live in the city, and I think a lot of the city's hustle and bustle and the pace is really unhealthy. And so I had a full head of hair just a couple of years ago, and I think I just I outgrew my hair in a way. I kind of jumped into experiencing as much stress actually as I could handle, and I reached a critical point in which I had no time for food or family or interaction. Like, the city really changed me, and I think I need to really make sure that I can slow down and have interactions, have conversations with people, because I think the go of the job and the capitalism is just bent off of, like, you don't take time for yourself. You don't take time to sit down and eat a full meal and say grace and have the healthy conversations. The whole startup culture is built off of your whole life is just grinding and working. So I didn't feel like I could live in the city and take any time to myself other than going to the gym, which really was life-saving for me, and finding some nature where I could. But if you're working wake up at 6 a.m., you're in the office and you're grinding, there's not a lot of time or energy, outside of work. And so that's where road biking has been life-saving for me, and running community has been huge. There's points where I felt like I had no time to take a breath. But if I can go do a half marathon or a marathon and have these interactions with people and be breathing and pushing myself in a way that's healthy around other people, like that, just everything in my life improves when I do that sort of thing. And so,
Yeah. So you mentioned different strains of cannabis. There are, of course, strains that are known to be mellow. They mellowize you. They mellow you out. And so there's all these different things. And so when I talk I'm not here to push cannabis, but I just want to share that there are things that people have to know. Just like jujitsu, you have to know what your options are going in, and it's not this one size fits all type of a thing. Each jujitsu gym's different, what have you. But if you look at it and you get knowledge and you tell the instructor what you want, tell your grapplers what you want, what you're looking to get out of it, when you can go harder, when you can go softer, when you have an injury, everything works out. And the same thing I would say applies to cannabis. If you go to Vancouver, they've got streets that have 3 or 4 dispensaries where they have people who work there that study this stuff, just like I study fitness and other things.
yeah,
This is like a passion for them. They study it, it's their job, and they will ask you questions or have you write down on a form what your background is, what your health issues are, what you're looking to get. Have you tried this? You have any allergies? All that stuff. And it's done like a very medicinal investigation of what would work for you. And then they don't have 3 options. They've got 50 different options of different
yeah,
strains. And then out of those 50 options, they can also tell you an amount of that one option that, they weed it down to 3, and you pick one of those. And then they say, well, let's start out with this amount and try it this way and do it as an edible or as a whatever. It's a
right,
very, very highly specialized field. And most people I know that say, I had a bad experience with it, they went to a party and somebody passed around something they didn't even know what was in there, and they
right.
took a hit. They took a hit on a bong or a joint or something, and that's their experience, and they never went back. So maybe you can share some thoughts around that, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think bud tenders are great. They are the sommeliers of the cannabis world. And so you can go into a dispensary and you can just say, hey, I don't know what I want, but maybe I have a headache, or maybe I'm sleepy, or, they'll be able to guide you in the right direction to take a product that's good for you. I would say edibles are tricky. I stay away from edibles myself. And, I think the dosing and the effects it's different for everyone. But I'm not a heavy cannabis user by any means, but it's been something that's been a helpful tool. It's just a tool like anything else, right? Like, I think, whether you're supplementing with protein or cannabis, or there's just tools, and you use them as you see fit. And so cannabis for me is something that's it's comforting to know it's there if I need it. And it's not like I need to use it every day, but if I have trouble sleeping, or if I've had a long stressful day, or if I am not feeling hungry, I can go to that. And so Autumn Brands has great tinctures. That's actually a great form factor. And it's again, getting away from that stoner mentality. It's right. Like,
No.
you don't have to be in the corner hunched over smoking a bowl. You can use the tincture. You could drop it in coffee. If you want a little buzz, or, there's different form factors that are really good. And yeah, like, I think athletics is really the next market for a lot of this cannabis stuff. I've seen a company called off field, I think they are, in LA, and their whole thing is about the runner's high, actually. So they're selling these gummies, mostly CBD gummies, but you have a high after running, right? It's like, there's an actual chemical high that everyone gets after they run. There's more endorphins. And so we also have cannabinoid systems in our bodies. And so whatever you take, you can trigger certain effects, right? So I think we're all, a lot of the health and wellness folks like you and I, we're chasing this runner's high. We felt this high before. We feel this high when we go in the ocean, we go surf, we go run. And so it's important to get that, but hopefully it's not, again, overly processed away from what is natural, right? Hopefully you shouldn't have to spend $1,000 to go golf to feel that high, right? Or have this gated process just to feel that, stoke, if you will. So
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. We're coming up on the hour, and I'll probably wind it down here in the next minute or so. So I just wanted to remind people that I have a mission. One of them, I have several missions, but one of them is to help athletes before, during, and after their high performance years, which could mean competitive with yourself, like if you're just running long distances on your own, or you're competing in events as a teammate or on an individual level where you've got coaching, therapists, trainers, travel, all that type of stuff. So it's helping those people be more balanced and enjoy each moment. Those are part of my missions, and theagingathlete.com is a good source. It'll lead you to my book, which is called The Aging Athlete, and then my upcoming book, which is called Raising a Child Athlete, ? Things you need to know. And that's in response to a parent who said, don't just write books for the adults because they're already fruit that's fallen off the tree, and they're already compromised by the system they grew up in, and they've got injuries. Talk to the young people and their coaches and their parents and their siblings and their teammates so they can learn about joy and movement, recreation, balance, yoga, wellness, all this type of stuff, and they can incorporate it so that the high performance and winning at all costs is just one little piece of that jigsaw puzzle. It's not the main thing that they focus on. It's just one little part. What are your thoughts on that before we wrap it up, Andy?
I think you're right on point, Sifu. I think if I knew some of these strategies or perspectives growing up, I would be, a more sustainable, stronger athlete. Because I think, there was times where I just pushed my body too hard. I didn't understand recovery is necessary. Nutrition is something that we should all learn more about, because, you got to fuel your body in the right way to do any of this stuff. And so, and we're all aging athletes. I don't care if you think you're the baddest, person on the planet at whatever sport you're doing. You're aging. You need to be able to take care of your body and your mind. And this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what both of our passions are. So I'm grateful that we got to, share our experience in little bits and pieces. And I think it's a conversation we can go on and on about, and I'd be happy to talk more and, get down into specifics, and just grateful for the time here, Sifu. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. And again, LeSavage.com is one of your websites, and we'll put that in the comments below. And if anybody has any other athletes, experts, researchers, people that I can tap into for great information, great content, entertaining and informative, please send me an email through my website, theagingathlete.com. And I know Andy's got a podcast. And do you have anything you're reaching out for, people that you're hoping to interview, or specialists you're trying to interview for your podcast, Andy?
That's a good question. I am actually, hoping to talk to a monk and a guru of sorts to start that off, and then different entrepreneurs and athletes, people that have been successful as entrepreneurs that can live a healthy life. So I've got a couple people teed up, and again, like a Wim Hof would be someone that's ideal, because that's just where my passion is. I've got a blog up on Jack LaLanne. You mentioned him. I would love to talk with someone in his family and understand, how that day-to-day life looks on their end of you know, being with someone that's innovated fitness products and nutrition and been a leader in that. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, if I can keep some of the dreams and messages of Jack LaLanne available to the community during my lifetime and through my videos afterwards, I think I've done a good service. I really liked Jack, still like him. I met him, and just a wonderful guy, lighthearted, would sing songs. He had the longest running TV show and the one-man TV show in the history of television at the time of his passing. It still may be. And he just kept that attitude going and didn't lose faith. It's easy to lose faith in the system and in people, but he never lost that. And that's the reason why I'm always working on, myself and passing on message to other and forgiving and forgetting and not losing faith. Those are great messages I got as a young person and still get today when I think about Jack LaLanne and his mission.
Amen. And yeah, Bragg's Food, I would love to talk with them. He's written some books, and the apple cider vinegar is one of those tools that anyone can use to be a little bit healthier. And then yeah, there's so many good people out there. Paul Chek, are you familiar with him?
I am. Yep.
Yeah, I love what he's putting out there, and his podcast is invaluable as well. So
yeah, maybe I'm going to defer to the younger organized marketing business guy that I think you are. Maybe you could put together a panel, maybe a virtual panel thing where we have 3 to 5 people, and we have we have some topics we go over and we flesh out some ideas and have a little bit of debate maybe, and then have calls come in and messages from the internet to where we can respond to those. And that might be a fun hour and a half thing to do. Maybe you could pick a topic, and I'd love to participate in something organized like that.
I'm into that. That's a great idea. And that's what I do. I bring together like-minded people and athletes and entrepreneurs. So yeah, let's do that. I'd be happy to.
So we're going to sign off. Big aloha from Sifu Slim here. And I'm so grateful that Andy LeSavage joined me today. And we ask you to please please subscribe, and leave your comments below, and we'll try to respond to those in due time. All the best from where we are in that plight of wellness and balance. Aloha.